Hey guys, I'm Chris Buck, and a very warm welcome to Friday Fretworks. And this week, we're taking a look at one of the most wildly successful abject failures of all time. Of course, talking about the Gibson Explorer. The year is 1958, and Gibson, although they may not know it, are on the cusp of what would ultimately prove to be one of the biggest years in their history, with the introduction of no less than 6 new designs, including the Sunburst Les Paul Standard and the ES335, a frenzied period of innovation instigated entirely by the success of Californian upstarts Fender, who, with the introduction of the Stratocaster in 1954, had captured a zeitgeist in a way that, as of yet, had eluded Gibson. Its sunburst finish, its futuristic design, and of course its space-age themed name, we'll come back to that in a second, captured the attention of a younger generation who, no doubt spurred on by the success of Strat-wielding Buddy Holly and the Crickets, would flock to Fender's flagship model in their masses. And thus, in early 1957, Gibson president Ted McCarty would assemble a design team headed by Larry Allers to design 3 new models, collectively known as the Modernistic series, that, to quote him, were to be so outlandish that they would cause a stir at the NAMM show. The first of which, the Modern, thanks to a lukewarm reception by prospective dealers, thankfully never made it to production, but both the Futura, soon to be renamed the Explorer, no doubt in the wake of Explorer 1, launched in 1958, and the Flying V would both go on to become future classics, despite at the time being an unmitigated disaster, selling less than 150 guitars combined over the 2 models over their 2 years of production, with the Explorer actually only making up 22 of that number. So what went wrong? Now, both the Flying V and the Explorer were like no guitar Gibson had ever made, both in terms of their shape and their construction. Both featuring Gibson's new patent-applied-for humbucking pickups, both guitars were to be constructed from Carina, the American trade name for West African hardwood limber, which it's speculated was used for its appearance and colour, which bore an uncanny resemblance to a certain single cutaway Fender introduced in 1951. But it's also been speculated that, seeing as Gibson had used Carina for their Skylark lap steel in 1957, there was more than likely some spare material floating around the factory. Now, unlike the Les Paul with its traditional 4-knob layout, both the Flying V and the Explorer were to move to a sleeker 3-knob layout, both pickups still having individual volume controls, but there being a master tone control instead. And of course, both guitars featuring a luxurious gold-plated hardware. Now, a few guitars did escape the factory in 58 with a split headstock design, most famously seen on Rick Derringer's 58 Explorer, but ultimately Gibson were to quickly settle on the scimitar design, or the hockey stick, that mirrors the lower horn, with Gibson heralding the Explorer's arrival as a design for the future, which was to be a real asset to the combo musician with a flair for showmanship. But it appears to have been wishful thinking, with both guitars arguably being a little too modernistic for their time. With a retail value of $247.50, the same as a Les Paul Standard, which is about $2,500 in today's money, both guitars were a commercial flop, with the Flying V only selling 19 models in its first year production of 1958 and 3 in 1959, bringing the known total number of original Carina Explorers to 22. There were some leftover parts assembled and shipped in 62, 63, and although we don't know specific numbers on those, it's estimated that less than 50 Gibson Explorers ever left Kalamazoo, easily making it their rarest production model ever made. Unlike the Flying V, which despite also being considered a commercial failure, did find favour with several high-profile players at the time, notably Lonnie Mack and Albert King, there was nobody really championing the Explorer, and as such it would not only take a renewed interest in vintage guitars in the 70s to bring it back from the dead, but also several high-profile replicas, notably Hamer's Standard, introduced in 1974, of course famously played by Rick Nielsen, a man who undoubtedly knows one or two things about Explorers. That very same year, Eric Clapton was to be seen sporting an original Carina Explorer, albeit one with a somewhat unusually shaped rear fin. Reportedly sold to Eric as a rare factory prototype, Eric then gave the guitar away to Junior Marvin upon realising that it was just in fact a butchered original. Eric would then play another pivotal role in the Explorer's history when he would sell an Explorer, presumably the replacement for that butchered original, to Lynyrd Skynyrd's Alan Collins in 1976, who upon switching from his preferred Firebird would undoubtedly go on to be one of the players most commonly associated with the Explorer. Clearly influenced by its resurgence, Gibson would go on to release a number of reissues over the years, arguably most notably in 1981, however, with their first attempt at accurately recreating the modernistic series in its entirety, not just the V and the Explorer, but the fabled Moderne. Now, it's that exact model of guitar that I'm playing in today's video, all three, interestingly, currently for sale at ATB Guitars here in the UK for a cool £32,500. If you're feeling flush, I'll leave a link down in the description box. But of course, in the years that followed, the Explorer would continue to go from strength to strength, with the Edge to Matthias Jabs to James Hetfield to Lizzie Hale to Slash to Gary Moore to Dave Grohl to Bill Kelly are all putting the Explorer to incredible use, thus cementing its place not only within Gibson's pantheon of electric guitars, but as one of the most distinctive, instantly identifiable guitar designs ever created. Now, of course, thanks to the scarcity of the originals, it's also amongst the most consistently valuable guitars on earth, with one having sold and set the then record for a non-celebrity owned guitar on London's Denmark Street in 2016 for $1.1 million. Put all of that together, for a guitar that barely made it out of double digits in its original run, it's not too bad of a legacy, I would say. As ever, I'm Chris Buck, you're watching Friday Fretworks. I'm going to play you out now, but as ever, please subscribe, hit the bell icon if you haven't already, and I shall see you next week for another episode. Cheers guys, take care, see you soon.